It was a rainy night in Ohio. The streets were almost empty, except for the occasional car rushing home. At the corner of Blackwood Street stood an old Victorian house, long abandoned, its windows shattered and paint peeling. Locals whispered about it, claiming strange sounds came from inside at night. Most people avoided it, except one man. Daniel Carter, a 32-year-old investigative journalist, had recently moved to town. He wasn't the type to believe in ghost stories. To him, every rumor was a mystery waiting to be solved. That night, carrying only a flashlight and a small recorder, Daniel stood in front of the house on Blackwood Street, stared at it for a while, and then slowly pushed the rusted gate open. Daniel. The gate let out a loud creak. Daniel muttered to himself, "Perfect. The whole neighborhood probably knows I'm here now." He stepped inside, boots crunching against broken glass and dried leaves. The air was thick, smelling of mold and something metallic. As he moved further, the sound of dripping water echoed through the hollow rooms. Daniel whispered into his recorder, September 14th. Entered the Blackwood property at 11:47 p.m. Locals claim voices are heard around midnight, testing validity. The floorboards groaned with every step. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, torn in places. At the end of the hallway stood a staircase, its railing broken. Daniel aimed his flashlight up the stairs. Dust floated in the beam, but something else caught his eye: small footprints, dusty but recent, leading upward. Daniel's heart skipped. Someone's been here. He followed the trail cautiously. With each step, the silence seemed heavier. Halfway up, he heard a faint whisper. He froze. The voice was soft, almost childlike, calling his name. Daniel. He whipped his light around. "Who's there?" No response, only silence. At the top floor, the footprints ended in front of a closed door. The paint on it was chipped, and carved into the wood were the words, "Don't open." Daniel hesitated. His instinct screamed to turn back, but curiosity pulled stronger. Slowly, he pushed the door open. Inside was a small bedroom. The walls were covered with old photographs pinned in uneven rows. He stepped closer, shining his light on them. His stomach tightened. Every single picture was of missing people reported in town over the past 30 years. Their faces stared back at him, faded but recognizable. Daniel whispered, "This can't be real." Suddenly, behind him, the door slammed shut. He spun around, breathing hard. His flashlight flickered, and for a brief second, he saw someone standing in the corner of the room, a tall shadow, unmoving. "Who are you, Daniel?" demanded voice trembling. The shadow didn't answer. Instead, Daniel heard another whisper, closer this time, right in his ear. "Why did you come here?" Daniel stumbled backward, heart pounding. The flashlight slipped from his hand and rolled across the floor. Darkness swallowed the room. For a long moment there was silence. Then, faintly, he heard footsteps circling him. Daniel crouched, groping for the flashlight. His hand brushed against something cold metal, grabbed it, and lifted it to the light of the moon slipping through the broken window. It was a key, small and rusted, with the number 17 carved into it. Suddenly, the flashlight flicked back on by itself, resting on the floor. Its beam pointed at a wardrobe across the room. Daniel swallowed hard, then walked toward it. He pulled the doors open. Inside hung an old coat, dusty and moth-eaten. Behind the coat, taped to the back wall, was a diary. Daniel opened it carefully. The pages were filled with shaky handwriting. One sentence repeated over and over. "The house keeps them here. The house won't let them go." As Daniel read those words, a cold wind rushed through the room. The photographs on the wall fluttered, and he heard crying, soft, sorrowful crying, coming from inside the walls themselves. Daniel whispered to himself, "What the hell is this place?" And that was when he noticed at the bottom of the diary, scribbled in red ink, was a name. His own. Daniel Carter. He dropped the diary in shock. His breath caught in his throat. How could his name already be written in a diary that looked decades old? Suddenly, the crying stopped. The silence returned. And then 3 slow knocks echoed from under the floorboards. Daniel froze. The knocks came again, louder this time. Crouched down, pressing his ear to the ground. From beneath the floor, a muffled voice whispered his name again. Daniel, help us. His eyes widened in horror. There were people under the house. Daniel's pulse raced as the whispers from beneath the floor faded. He stumbled backward, gripping the rusted key tightly. For a moment, he considered leaving the house. But something inside him, the journalist's instinct or maybe reckless curiosity, refused to stop. He whispered to himself, if there are people under this floor, I have to find them. Daniel swept the flashlight across the room again. His beam caught a small hatch near the corner, half hidden beneath an old rug. He pulled the rug aside, revealing a wooden trapdoor. The rusted key in his hand seemed to fit perfectly into the lock. With shaking fingers, he slid it in. The hatch opened with a sharp crack. A gust of stale air rushed out, smelling of earth and rot. A narrow ladder led downward into pitch black. Daniel muttered, "This is insane," but he descended anyway. The ladder creaked under his weight. At the bottom, his boots landed on damp soil. Lifted the flashlight. The beam revealed a narrow underground hallway carved out of dirt and stone, stretching deep beneath the house. The walls were lined with old wooden beams, many collapsing from rot. As Daniel moved forward, he noticed something carved into the walls. Dozens of names scratched in messy letters. Some were familiar, the same faces from the photographs upstairs. Then his stomach dropped. Among the names was his own again. Daniel Carter. His breathing quickened. No, this doesn't make sense. Suddenly, a sound echoed down the tunnel. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. Daniel swung his light down the passage. Nothing. The air felt heavier, pressing against his chest. He pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth. The tunnel eventually opened into a larger chamber. In the center was a wooden chair, old and splintered, with leather straps attached to its arms. Scattered around were broken tools, chains, and torn scraps of clothing. Daniel whispered. This was used. For holding people? On the wall, drawn in something dark, was a crude map of the house above. Several rooms were marked with red X's. One room in particular had a circle around it, the basement. Before Daniel could process this, a sudden voice echoed from the darkness. You shouldn't be here. Daniel spun, flashlight trembling in his grip. A figure stood just beyond the beam. It was a man, tall, dressed in a faded jacket, his face hidden in shadow. Daniel steadied his voice. Who are you? The figure stepped closer, revealing a gaunt, pale face. His eyes were hollow, sunk in deep, as if he hadn't seen daylight in years. They won't let you leave, the man said quietly. None of us can leave. Daniel took a step back. What do you mean us? The man tilted his head. The house, it feeds on us, keeps us here. It writes our names before we ever arrive. Daniel's grip tightened on the flashlight. Are you saying the house knew I'd come here? The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he pointed at the chair in the center of the chamber. Sit, you'll see. Daniel shook his head. Yeah, not a chance. The man's lips curled into a faint, almost pitying smile. Then it'll show you anyway. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. When it came back on, the chamber was filled with figures, men, women, and children, standing silently in the shadows. Their faces were pale, eyes lifeless, clothes from different decades. Daniel's chest tightened as he realized they weren't alive. The pale man whispered, These are the others, the ones who came before you. Daniel's breath caught. Ghosts. They moved closer, surrounding him slowly, their whispers rising in a chorus. His flashlight shook violently in his hand, as the voices overlapped. "Help us. Don't let it take you. You're already marked." Daniel backed against the wall. "No, this can't be happening." The pale man stepped closer. "You think you chose this house, Daniel?" "No, the house chose you. It always chooses." Before Daniel could respond, the ground beneath him rumbled. The walls trembled, dirt falling from the ceiling. The chamber seemed to shrink, the air growing colder. One of the ghostly figures reached out, his hand passing straight through Daniel's arm, sending a chill through his entire body. Daniel screamed, stumbling forward. He sprinted back into the narrow tunnel, away from the chamber. The whispers chased him, echoing through the earth. He climbed the ladder in a frenzy, bursting back into the upstairs bedroom. His chest heaved, sweat pouring down his face. He slammed the hatch shut behind him. But when he looked up, he froze. The photographs on the wall had changed. Every single picture now showed his face. Dozens of Daniels staring back at him. And underneath each photo was the same date. September 14th. Tonight, Daniel whispered in horror. It knew all along. From behind him, the pale man's voice whispered once more. "You can't escape." Daniel's knees went weak as he stared at the photographs. Every single one showed his face, with tonight's date written beneath. His mind spun. Was the house predicting his death? Or was it already decided? He staggered backward, gripping the diary he had dropped earlier. His hands trembled as he flipped to the last page again. The writing shifted before his eyes as if an invisible hand was still scribbling. New words formed. "Run if you want. It will end here like the rest." Daniel's chest tightened. He bolted out of the bedroom and into the hallway. The floorboards groaned louder than before, shaking under his weight. The house itself seemed alive now, pulsing with every step. He rushed down the stairs, but as he reached the front door, it slammed shut on its own. Daniel threw his shoulder against it, locked. He shouted, "Let me out!" But the house only answered with silence. Daniel turned and sprinted toward the back of the house, searching for another exit. Its windows cracked. He grabbed a chair and smashed it against the glass, but instead of breaking, the glass rippled like water. His reflection stared back at him, twisted, smiling. His own voice echoed from the reflection. "You're already inside. You're always inside." Daniel staggered back, his skin crawling. No, this isn't real. But it felt real. The floor shook again. He heard footsteps rushing above him, running back and forth, dozens of them, pounding like thunder. Suddenly, a voice spoke right behind him, calm, cold, familiar. "Why are you fighting it, Daniel?" He spun around. The pale man from the underground chamber stood in the doorway. His hollow eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Daniel demanded, "What do you want from me?" The man stepped closer. "It's not me. It's the house. It needs someone new. Someone to carry the story. To keep the cycle alive." Daniel shook his head violently. "No. I'm not staying here." The pale man tilted his head. "You already are. Look." He pointed toward the wall. Daniel turned and his stomach dropped. A new photograph was forming his photograph. Unlike the others, this one wasn't faded. It was sharp, alive, capturing him in this very moment. His terrified expression stared back at him. Daniel backed away, his breathing ragged. "No, I'm still alive." The pale man's voice dropped to a whisper. "For now." Daniel darted past him, running through the house. Room after room blurred together, bedrooms, hallways, staircases, until he realized something horrifying. He wasn't finding the exit. He was looping. Every door he opened led back to the same hallway. Every staircase led him in circles. He collapsed against the wall, clutching his head. "I can't get out. I can't get out." The whispers returned, louder now, filling every corner. They chanted his name in unison. "Daniel, Daniel." His flashlight flickered wildly, then died. He was left in complete darkness, and then silence. When the light returned, Daniel was no longer in the hallway. He was strapped to the chair in the underground chamber, the leather straps digging into his wrists. His heart pounded as he pulled against them, but they wouldn't budge. Across from him stood the pale man, watching silently. Daniel shouted, "Let me go!" The man's voice was calm. "I can't. I was in this chair once. Now it's your turn." Daniel's chest tightened with terror. "Then what happens to me?" Pale man leaned closer. "You'll become part of the house. Just like me. Just like all of them." Daniel shook his head desperately. "No, I won't." The chamber filled again with the ghostly figures. They surrounded the chair, their faces blank, their eyes empty. They reached toward him, whispering endlessly. The pale man whispered the final words Daniel would ever hear. "The house has already written your name. You were never here to investigate. You were here to stay." Daniel screamed, pulling against the straps, but the voices drowned him out, rising to a deafening roar. Then Silas. The chair was empty. Only the diary remained on the floor, its pages flipping by themselves until they stopped on the last entry. Daniel Carter, claimed by the house. Claimed by the house. Upstairs, in the bedroom on the wall, a new photograph finished forming. Daniel's face. His eyes lifeless, frozen forever among the others. And the house on Blackwood Street stood silently once more, waiting for the next name.